Achewillow, Season 2, Chapter 3, A Meal of Every Flavor. They say you see your life flash before your eyes at the moment of death. All I can remember is a profound dread that I might have left the back door to the cafe unlocked and wondering who would take care of brioche if I didn't make it. Then again, I didn't die, and maybe that means I don't have all the prerequisites for a full flashback. The demon dog, because I can't find a better name for it, gets tackled out of its leap an inch before it can gore me with its tusks. An overpowering smell of burnt hair and cooked meat makes me teeter on the edge between hunger and nausea. The thing comes so close that I can almost taste the breath from its maw. I need to run. I need to forget curiosity and ignore my concern and get the hell out of here. Whoever my savior is can handle it from here. My cake, the magical confection I use as a wedge between the hunger demon and the citizens of Achewillow, has been trampled into the grass, sigils smudged into mud. Even if only to get a new cake, I should go back to the Achewillow. Of course, I don't. Instead, I stand there like I'm made of stone. Reason demands my legs move, and curiosity forces my eyes to dart around, looking for the dog and whatever intervened in my favor, and fear damn near makes me wet myself. Birds, insects, and even the wind have gone silent, sharing in my terror. The only sound to fill the darkening twilight is a faint yipping and some moist ripping. I've worked in a butcher shop. I know the sound of muscle and sinew being pulled and ripped. I want to throw up. I want to double over and retch all over my running shoes, but the noise might attract attention. And right now, I want nothing more than to fade into the shadows. I want to be one of the trees, unremarkable, unimportant, invisible. The stench of burnt meat is suddenly stolen away by a brisk gust of wind. In its place, it's rotting offals that assaults my nostrils. This should push me over the edge of sickness. Fear and disgust winning their war against my poor stomach, forcing it to empty its contents on the ground. But as gross as the odor is, it's familiar. I know this smell as I know the smell of my own favorite brand of butter. There's 10 months of history between me and that stink. The yipping ends with a final bark and a growl, quickly replaced by slurping and chewing and the snapping of bones. It's not that hard to understand what's going on. It's a simple list of ingredients, and I can guess what's cooking. Still, I have to see the recipe get made with my own eyes, and I take a few trembling steps towards the noise. There, beyond a few trees, I see my old friend, my savior, my worst enemy. The hunger demon, skin like the mold on bread, hunches over the dog creature. Pale green complexion picks up the low light like the back of a frog, stained with crimson blood. The dog has gone from menacing hell monster to little more than roadkill. Its back is broken and its stomach ripped open. The jaw that should have torn out my throat hangs open at a strange angle. Hearing me, or sensing me, the hunger demon pauses from its feast to turn empty black eyes in my direction. I want to say that it recognizes me, but I can tell that it did not save me out of thanks for the dozens of cakes I've fed it over the months. It went for a meal, not heroics. That it pounced on the dog instead of me was the win of a coin toss, nothing more. As if to highlight that point, the beast opens its mouth, damn near unhinging its jaw in the process, and through blunt red teeth, it howls in tortured anger. Finally, curiosity satisfied and reason and fear in agreement, my legs are allowed to turn me towards the Achewillow and run. Here you go, honey. It's no small thing to say that this is as weird as I've felt being in Achewillow yet. I've fed ghosts, and I've brewed coffee that's supposed to help an old man dream lucid dreams. I've befriended a cult leader and served pie to a woman who predicts the weather, with shocking accuracy, by licking rocks. The juxtaposition is what does it, though. 10 minutes ago, I was running from one demon eating another. It's probably still there, a little over 100 yards from where I sit, at the counter of my cozy little coffee shop. A song from that folk album I like is drifting through the air, and the patrons Olivia has been serving in my absence are all involved in their casual chit-chat. I'm also sitting on the wrong side of the counter, having my own cooking served to me and a cup of my tea brewed for me. Nothing feels right. I guess I was right, Olivia says, sliding a spoon over to me. I didn't ask her for the piece of cobbler and ball of ice cream, but like a mother, she guessed what might make me feel better and got it for me. Not that putting food in my stomach is likely to make it stop doing somersaults every time I close my eyes. The image of the hunger demon feasting on the boiling entrails of another monster is going to keep me awake a few nights. I can't keep doing this, Olivia. I can feel my fingers shake against the sides of my head as I hold it up, slumped over the counter and trying to get my nerves back. Oh, honey, you're doing just fine. Olivia pats my forearm in a motherly way, as if I was complaining about missing the school dance or having a job application rejected, not coming within an inch of being eaten. One day, we should spare a night and I could try to bring you up to date on some of the stuff you're going to have to deal with here. My head, slumped between my shoulders since I sat down, snaps back up. Is that all it would take? A night, and I'd finally have encyclopedic knowledge of the weird happenings in this town? Surely not. I part my lips to accept Olivia's offer, if it is an offer, but I'm interrupted by the rattling of my spoon on my plate and the rumbling of a powerful engine. Blinding headlights sweep through the dining room like a wave, making a few of the patrons shield their eyes with hands and forearms. The metallic whine of huge brakes followed by the pneumatic sigh of an engine coming to a halt follow. A truck door slams and the chimes sing their song, announcing a client's arrival. Good evening, Gulliver says, his dark eyes scanning the cafe in imitation of his truck's lights. What are you doing here? I ask. Oh, just dropping in for a cup and a cake. You know, my usual. You don't have a usual. That's not true. I always have coffee and something to eat. I'm just very flexible with the details. Olivia slides my untouched cobbler over to where Gulliver sits. I wrap my hands around my tea mug in case she thinks it's okay to do the same with that, but instead she tosses a fresh cup under the spout of the coffee machine. Jokes aside, Gulliver, weren't you on your way out of town? Usually, Gulliver only drops by in Achewillow once a week to do some food service deliveries. Cleaners, ingredients, a few perishables, etc. There's very little reason for him to hang around. Oh, he's typically generous in his patronage of the cafe, but seldom at this late an hour. Had a few deliveries in Hemmingford that took longer than expected, he explains, stuffing baked apples into his mouth. The sight of someone eating food so voraciously makes me want to gag. I figured I'd be happier getting a snack here and maybe breakfast tomorrow before heading back north. He crams more cobbler through his lips, closing them slowly and chewing even slower. His eyes close in rapturous appreciation. This is my cobbler he's enjoying with such open excitement. Usually, this is the kind of reaction that is to my ego like yeast is to bread. Tonight, watching anyone eat makes my skin crawl and sweat. What's wrong with you? Gulliver asks, mouth half full, strands of saliva mixed in with caramelized apple juice stretching between his teeth. You look sick. Miriam saw one demon too many tonight, Olivia answers for me, putting coffee, cream, and a bowl of sugar in front of Gulliver. When is a single demon not one too many? He asks in return. They act like this is the most normal conversation to have. Then again, I'm the one who's been feeding a hunger demon like it's a stray dog for the better part of a year. Who am I to complain that what they're saying isn't normal? I suppose it's a credit to Achewillow that some of the clients close enough to hear raise an eyebrow at the subject of discussion, like any sane person would. It wasn't just the one demon, though, I explain after a sip of my tea to steady my nerves. There was another one, like a dog with tusks or something. It damn near took my head off. That, the threat to my life, stirs Gulliver out of his laissez-faire attitude. He swallows hard and puts his spoon down, as if he was about to spring into action. Gulliver is big, massive by any measure of humanity, but he'd be no match for that dog, and certainly could do little to stand up to the hunger demon either. It's fine, I say, touched by the sentiment. It's gone now. Our starving friend took care of it. What I neglect to say, what I've yet to tell even Olivia, is how the hunger demon completely ignored the pistachio marzipan petit four that was meant to appease its hunger. That next week, when the time comes to feed it again, I probably won't have a fresh hellhound on the menu to offer. If my cooking doesn't work anymore, then what? Well, Gulliver says, pleased to be picking his spoon back up. That's good news. If you ask me, only good demon is a dead demon. I'm about to nod my agreement, wondering how and if we could ever get rid of the one I have to regularly keep fed, when I'm once again interrupted by the door chimes. I can't help my heart from skipping a beat when I see Peter walk in, flashing a smile in my direction. It immediately sinks again at the sight of his sister Agnes, creeping in like a shadow to his sunshine. Hello again. I hesitate on his name, even though it couldn't be fresher in my mind. Peter? His natural smile broadens while his sister's frown deepens. Her lips are pressed so tight as to be non-existent. She looks like a tiny little pressure keg working overtime not to explode. Welcome back, Agnes. I turn my smile towards the angry girl. She looks like she couldn't be more than a year my junior, and I can't put my finger on what her problem is. Enjoyed your cakes and cookies? Agnes sets her jaw, visibly gritting her teeth looking for an answer. Her eyes, which I now notice are a pale hazelnut, almost gold, turn away and towards the display again. They were fine. She forces out the words in a half hiss before focusing on Olivia. Can I have an iced coffee and some cake? Olivia takes a little too long to tear her eyes away from Peter, long enough for Agnes to get even more irritated. She looks just about to walk around the counter and get the food herself when I pull myself off my stool, flattening the wrinkles in my pants, a subconscious effort to look somewhat professional. I'll get it. I need something to do anyways. I have a whole batch of pistachio marzipan petit four to liquidate after all. With a shake of her head, Olivia finally snaps out of it and starts ringing up the order. I'm sorry, she apologizes. It's been a long day. What about you, honey? Nothing to eat? Drink? The question is directed at Peter, and I can feel a pang of jealousy that she gets to interact with him. I pour dark coffee and cream over ice cubes and watch from the corner of my eye. Olivia, who has got to be more than twice that boy's age, has the body language of a teenager. She's leaning over the register, resentful of every inch that separates them, and the fingers of her right hand twist playfully with her black hair. Oh no, Peter answers, waving his hand politely. I've already eaten. My God, his teeth are perfect. Well, that'll be $8.77, Olivia tells an inattentive Agnes. Peter gives his sister a soft look, relaxing his smile in his eyebrows, and shakes his head a little before reaching into his pocket. Oh, Gulliver interrupts, standing and pulling a handful of money from his wallet. I've got this. The big oaf doesn't even bother counting bills or making sure he's got enough to pay for the food. He just tosses whatever he's got next to the register in front of Olivia, eager to beat Peter to the punch. His eyes and smile are turned towards an oblivious Agnes, who seems confused by the exchange. So, that's why he's in town tonight. The moment of bewilderment doesn't last before exploding into outrage, but for the briefest of seconds, I can see some sort of family resemblance between the siblings. It's not a particular trait, but when she's not all piss and vinegar, Agnes is positively beautiful. That's why Gulliver is acting so generous. Did he see this before the rest of us? I can pay for my own goddamn food. Agnes sweeps away Gulliver's generous offer, along with his money from the counter, all while stepping between her brother and Olivia. She offers her own money like it's a shot from a gun, angry, loud, and violent. I watch all of this and realize I'm wrapping myself up in the mundanity of these little encounters and interactions like I would a blanket for comfort. It helps me forget the demons in the woods and the magic cake that doesn't work magic anymore. At least it still has the power to alleviate someone's hunger, I hope. I set it down on the counter, a seat away from Gulliver, along with the iced coffee, and slide a fork and napkin next to them. Like a trapped animal, unsure of whether she should claw at her attacker or bolt up a tree for safety, Agnes contemplates the stool, the counter, and her order. She eyes Gulliver with hostile suspicion before climbing onto a seat and pulling the tall glass of coffee to her lips. Long, elegant fingers with black varnished nails pick up the fork before she digs into the petit four I served her. I squint, looking for a trace or fragment of something in her expression. Through the crack in her mask of anger and teenage angst, I search for that elusive spark. Ah, there it is. The subtle curve of the lip that even Chef Gagnon could never completely hide from me when doing his evaluations. It's the ripple in the poker face that no one can hide when tasting something truly delicious. And my petit four is the kind of treat that would break even the Queen's Guard at Buckingham Palace. Just not good enough for a hunger demon anymore. Agnes catches me watching her and reverts back to her usual frown, shoring up her demeanor. "So," I say, breaking the silence around my register, "where are you guys from?" Brother and sister look at each other, both with a different expression. Agnes reacts like she's been caught in a lie, a fugitive identified by the authorities. Meanwhile, Peter steps up to sit between her and Gulliver, like he expects her to answer. The panicked paralysis in her eyes makes it clear she won't. "We're from the city," Peter says, stealing a sip of his sister's coffee and nodding in approval of the flavor. "Couldn't afford the rent there anymore, so we found the absolute most random town the internet could recommend, and here we are." "Well," Gulliver agrees, sipping from his own mug, "you couldn't have picked a more random place than Achewillow." The two men share a bit of a laugh at the comment, even though it barely qualifies as a joke. "Well, so far we really like it. It's so much better than where we were before. I think it'll be a good place for us to figure out our next move." Gulliver nods knowingly, picking a cookie from his plate to munch on. "It's a good town for that," he explains. "It's like a crossroads. It's so many things at once that it can be a little overwhelming, but also, from here, you can go pretty much anywhere, metaphorically speaking." Olivia and I share a look, and I swear I can read the incredulity on her face like a road sign on one of Gulliver's proverbial roads. Since when is our big friend the contemplative philosopher? "That's a great way to put it. I'm sorry, didn't catch your name?" "Ed, or Edward," Gulliver answers, giving his actual first name. He follows up by shaking Peter's hand, and then extending it towards Agnes. She sees it. We all see her seeing it, but instead of reciprocating, she puts another generous bite of cake between her teeth. I understand her. I've been on the receiving end of Gulliver's suffocating exuberance. It's a lot to take in. He's tall as a mountain and can appear menacing even when he doesn't mean to. Aggressively friendly isn't a great look on him, but I don't think he can help it. "Come on, Agnes," Peter nudges his sister. "Man is trying to be friendly. Least you can do is shake his hand." It's not a forceful suggestion. There's only a pinch of insistence for flavor. One that Agnes ignores, drinking deeply from her coffee instead. "Ag," her brother soothes. "Maybe if you were a little friendlier, you wouldn't need all the sweets." This is the second time Peter touches on his sister's eating habits. I don't dare theorize what her issues might be, but I can imagine a dozen scenarios. I've been a teenager in Montreal. I've been a student in a cooking school. I've seen the gamut of eating disorders caused by depression, anxiety, low self-esteem. The list never ends. Peter seems to really care about his sister's well-being, but this is also an obvious trigger for her. And she demonstrates that by planting her fork into the wooden surface of my countertop. "How about you do your own thing and I'll do mine, Peter?" The impact of the fork and the volume of her words steals the voice out of every other customer in the cafe. For what seems to stretch into a whole hour, we watch Agnes stand over her terrified brother, her chest heaving with adrenaline-fueled anger and fists clenched, begging to be unleashed onto him. The relaxing sound of folk music dribbles out of the speakers, clashing with the mood of the room. Agnes, Peter starts, and I can hear a tremble in his voice, but his sister doesn't let him finish. No! You want friends? Have friends. Hey, friends, you think Peter's so great? Just wait until you see what kind of a piece of garbage he really is. There, enjoy your friends. Her outburst over, Agnes pushes past her brother, making a point to elbow him on her way before storming out of the Achewillow cafe. Gulliver makes to get up. We can guess what he wants to do. He's going to be the chivalrous knight, following the poor, wounded woman out and offering succor. Thankfully, Olivia puts a hand on his shoulder and sits him back down, shaking her head and whispering, no. Well, Gulliver is the first to break the silence. That was awkward. Son, Olivia jumps in, relieved that someone is talking. You've got a talent for understatement. These cracks in the discomfort are all that's needed for the rest to break and melt apart like a thin sheet of ice. The rest of the clients collectively shrug and go back to their individual business. Conversations stutter a little, but start again. Food and drinks left unattended for the duration of the drama are eaten and drunk. This is my fault, Peter sighs. He pushes himself to his feet and stuffs his hands in his pocket. Smile and confidence have drained from him and hesitate to return. I shouldn't be so hard on her. I just worry about her health, you know? A small curl of his lip and a squint of his eye tease at his usual sunny demeanor. Not your fault, Olivia says. Your sister looks like she's just a spark short of a forest fire. Peter shrugs in non-committal agreement. Maybe lay off her eating habits. The words slip out of my mouth on their own, and by the time I realize that they might offend Peter, they're already out there, resonating through the air. Olivia and Gulliver both cast disapproving glances at me, but I stand firm. I'm not saying you're body-shaming her or anything, but she seems to be doing okay. I mean, she looks like she's doing okay for herself. Halfway through, though, I realize I have no idea what I'm talking about. I don't know Agnes any more than I know Peter. I could have kept my opinion to myself until I knew more and avoided insulting him in the process. But he doesn't look insulted. Instead, his smile returns in full force, and he leans a little forward in my direction, looking directly into my eyes. I want to call it disarming, but it feels like so much more. I think you're right, he says. All those sweets and carbs aren't good for her, and it's not what she should be eating for sure, but there's a nicer way for me to go about it. I guess because it's for her own good, I don't watch my tone enough. Right, yeah. I was expecting disapproval and contradictions. I don't have the words ready for agreement. Also, he says like he just remembered something important. I owe you an apology. I come into your cafe, pick a fight with my sister, and I didn't even purchase anything. Let me make it up to you. I didn't notice, but all the while he was talking, my hands pulled up in front of me and my fingers started playing with the fabric of my shirt. I'm half a step back, balancing on the balls of my feet like I'm about to run. Of course, I don't want to run. I want whatever it is he's going to offer. I don't know what it is, but I want it. You're not working right now, right? He nudges his head towards Olivia, noticing her apron. Let me buy you a drink. You can tell me more about the town. So much blood rushes to my face that I can feel my skin burning. It's like getting a sudden fever or sticking my head in the oven to check on a roasting turkey. I can only imagine how red I must be. Great, he says, responding to a nod I barely notice giving. I saw this little bar with a terrace I've been dying to try. The Lady Godiva, I think. I've seen that bar, along with several others in Achewillow, mostly taverns and microbreweries. I wasn't much of a bar hopper in Montreal, and certainly haven't been more since moving to Achewillow, not with a cafe to run and a demon to feed. I must have stood dumbstruck for a while, because it's Olivia that pushed me back around the corner and damn near shoved me out of my own establishment. Is this a date? We're walking towards the Lady Godiva. Peter has his hands in his pockets and is looking forward. Dark hair catching the warm summer evening wind, head held high with the kind of confidence that would win over any room. Meanwhile, I slouch a little and my eyes dart all over, worried someone might see me out of the Achewillow and walking the streets. If this is a date, I'm woefully ill-equipped for it. I've never been much of a dater. While all my friends were discovering how to use apps on their phone to pick boyfriends to try out, like ordering love from some takeout menu, I was already in a relationship with Trevor. I don't even know if I'm supposed to swipe left or right on these things. We sit at a table outside. There's a pleasant smell of roasted meat coming from the kitchens, and the texture of lime and salt hangs in the air from the margaritas other diners are enjoying. The sign on the table explains why they're so popular. $3 Margarita Friday, it brags. Laziness, or lack of originality, makes it that I end up with one of those drinks and a small plate of pork tips to nibble on. They're a little too salty, but otherwise fine. So, how did you end up in Achewillow? Peter has been pretty quiet so far, perusing the drink menu before ordering a glass of whiskey. If he'd ordered some wine, I might have been able to identify what he was drinking, but as far as I'm concerned, whiskey is limited to Johnny Walker Red for recipes and little more. I can't even pronounce some of the more regional names for Scotch. What do you mean? I'm not so much playing coy as I'm still reeling from the invitation. When was the last time I was out at all, even with friends, let alone some guy? You're obviously not from the area. Everyone else here is so quaint or characterful. Are you calling me boring? He interrupts his sip to correct me. Oh, not at all. A girl that's, 20? Running her own cafe? That's impressive and not boring at all. But it lacks the kind of off-the-beaten-path uniqueness the rest of the people here seem to have. I'm from Montreal. I inherited the Achewillow. Ah, he exclaims, pulling out a credit card to pay for drinks and food. I can't place my finger on why, but the card seems familiar. It's not from the bank a couple of blocks from the cafe, which is where most people seem to be doing their banking in these parts. So what does the name stand for anyways? I get it's named after the city, but what's an Achewillow? That's a question I've had myself on a few occasions. I've quizzed Olivia on the subject a couple of times. It's the name of a tree. It's supposed to be a magical tree with roots that feed on pain but fruits that grant miracles, but at the mention of miracles, Peter leans in, fingers still wrapped around his whiskey glass, but all his attention on me. But there's no such thing as an Achewillow tree. That's the refrain. The town is named after a tree that doesn't exist and I've never heard of in any religion, mythology, or stories. I've looked into it, I explain, glad to have so much of his attention on me. Scoured the internet and found nothing. The only reference to an Achewillow is this town. He seems to consider the fact for a moment, always smiling, but frowning deep in his thoughts. Words always seem to come easily to Peter, but right now, he's considering the scant details of this fictional tree as if it were a life-or-death situation. You know what I think? I think there is such a thing as an Achewillow tree. And I think that's why this town is even here at all. And I think it would be fun if we, a couple of outsiders, might be able to get the locals to tell us more about it. His smile and wink tell me he's not really looking for an answer. This isn't an offer for a serious quest, but rather a joke between two city people at the expense of local myth. But Peter hasn't seen all the weird things I've seen. As far as he knows, Achewillow is just some backwater haven for weirdos. He doesn't know about the demon in the woods, or the ghost in Julia Remington's mansion, or the ghosts at the hockey arena, for that matter. He leans back and sips from his whiskey. The empty plate of pork tips sits between us, and I can barely remember eating it. I can't even tell if Peter had any himself. Well, I say, trying to get in on the joke, if we do find it, I know a couple of wishes I'd make with those fruits. I hadn't intended anything euphemistic with that comment. My thoughts were back on my career as a chef, but I can tell by the narrowing of Peter's features that he's read a little more into it. And I don't mind him making the mistake at all. Really? What would Miriam Dufour make as a first wish, eating from the fruit of the Achewillow tree? I think it's the margarita, or maybe I've been alone in this town for too long, but a few ideas that are not suited for polite conversation cross my mind. I try to cook up a way to say them without being too crude, to somehow bake the idea into his head with my words so that I can play coy if necessary, hopefully in a way that won't embarrass myself. Unfortunately, I don't even get the opportunity to put my foot in my mouth as I was kinda hoping I could. Peter! It's Agnes. I can hear her before I can see her, but I can tell from the direction Peter is looking that she's behind me. We should have sat inside. What the hell do you think you're doing? Achewillow is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You have no idea how much it helps. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Visit ko-fi.com/achewillow to donate a cup. Questions? Comments? Email us at achewillow@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the username Achewillow.